It's a fun gun to shoot. Hello folks, and welcome to the Adventure Cowboy channel. I'm Clayton Markser. In this video we're going to be looking at this. The Cimarron 1860 Henry Civilian in 4440. Anybody who's ever studied the history of the American West or the Civil War, they're familiar with the Henry, the first repeating rifle. Now there was previous models, the volcanic and such, but this was the first commercially successful lever action repeating rifle. It has a tubular magazine underneath the barrel. You'll notice this long slot so that the plunger can follow the rounds to the chamber. The Henry is an iconic rifle with its brass follower tab very visible, no forestock, of course the beautiful brass receiver, and a very unique loading system. It loads from the front, but not in the front up by the muzzle. It loads from the front right about here because the barrel actually swivels. Let me show you. You lift the brass follower tab all the way up and then rotate the barrel. There you go. When you rotate the barrel, it opens up the front of the magazine, and here you can see the brass follower. After you've loaded the magazine with your rounds, you lift the follower back up, rotate the barrel back into place, and gently let the follower down so that it doesn't slam the cartridges which are in the magazine, because you don't want to have any accidental discharges or have a chain fire with the impact of the rounds on the primers of the cartridges in front of them, causing them to go off. Now, lever action ammunition is designed with a blunt tip on the bullet so that the pressure is spread out over the top of the primer and the surrounding case head to prevent any ignitions. But still, it's good practice not to just let your follower slam down. Let it down intentionally. The Henry action is very important. It is the first in a long series of actions of Winchester rifles that utilize a toggle link system, which is very smooth. It was replaced later with stronger actions that could handle higher pressures. But the toggle link was reliable and it was very smooth. One of the things Henry shooters figure out pretty quick is that they have to learn how to do the Henry walk with their hand. There's other terms for it, but that's what I read and I kind of liked it. Basically what happens is, as you're operating the action, the follower keeps getting closer and closer and closer. If you're holding your leading hand over the magazine, at some point you have to step your fingers over the follower. I'm going to try and demonstrate that right now. That was a very sloppy version of it, but you can see how my hand had to walk over the follower as I was shooting. Got a plate set up at 30 yards. See if I can hit it. It's a fun gun to shoot. In 1860, during the early Civil War, when everybody was shooting muzzleloaders or occasional single shots, the closest competition to this would have been the Spencer, and you had to cock it, then pull the hammer back, and you were limited to 7 rounds. This thing held 16 rounds originally in 44 rimfire. Now this one is chambered in 4440 and it holds 12 rounds in the magazine. It's quite a few. Let's put a few more downrange. One of the advantages to the Henry magazine with the slot in it is that you can see how many rounds you have, which is a lot. I seem to remember something about that damned Yankee rifle that you could load on Sunday and shoot all week. I believe that was from the Civil War. That's also a disadvantage as far as dirt and grime, which is why they improved the Henry with the Yellow Boy in 1866. Now we're going to shoot the Cimarron 1860 Henry Civilian in 4440 at 102 yards. And I'm going to shoot it offhand, because who shoots a rifle like this off the bench? Here we go. Not bad. Shot my gong off again. 102 yards, Cimarron 1860 Henry Civilian. It's a lot of fun. All right, I'm gonna get into a little bit of a controversial subject. I usually stay away from those in my videos, but this one I think is important for clarification's sake, because it has to do with the Henry rifle. This Cimarron 1860 Henry is the most authentic, the most faithfully reproduced version of the 1860 Henry that exists in the world. And right away, I know a whole bunch of people are saying, oh, I have a Henry original, and it's the most authentic there is because it's an actual Henry. The 1860 Henry original rifle from Henry Repeating Arms is not as authentic and not as faithful to the original Henry as the Cimarron 1860 Henry manufactured by Uberti. Here's a couple reasons why. First reason, the one that you can see the most clearly when you look at a Henry Repeating Arms Henry original rifle. I think that's the right nomenclature. First of all, on an authentic octagonal barrel that is period correct, you will notice that, like on this rifle, the lands on this barrel are flat with defined edges. And that's just because the Uberti process for making this is more faithful to the original process. Now, yes, we have better steels and we have more machinery, but it's closer to the way that the original Henrys were produced than the new Henry Repeating Arms version. The Henry Repeating Arms version, and you can go look at this for yourself, go look at one in a store, look up pictures of one up close. The Henry Repeating Arms one is so overbuffed that all of these edges on an octagonal barrel, all of theirs are round. So it isn't a true octagonal barrel in the way that you have a flat land and a defined edge between each land. The edges are so overbuffed that they're rounded. And while the gun is a handsome gun and they use beautiful wood, it's not period correct. And here's probably the biggest difference between the Henry Repeating Arms Henry original rifle and the Cimarron 1860 Henry. And that has to do with what's inside the action. If you pull apart a Henry original rifle and you look at the toggle link and all the parts of those actions, a Henry Repeating Arms rifle, those parts are cast. I think the hammer is even cast. Now, I'm not saying cast parts aren't strong, but that's not the way that they were originally built. They were milled, just like the way Uberti does it. They mill them. They take a piece of steel and they cut it into shape. They don't have a form, pour the metal in, and cast it to the shape. Will the Henry original rifle be strong and durable and last? It probably will. And they have great customer service if it doesn't. But if you were talking about authenticity and the most faithful reproduction of the original Henry rifle, the Cimarron 1860 Henry is as close as you're going to get. Uberti does a fantastic job building these, and Cimarron makes sure that they're built to the most authentic specs possible. I also want to clarify that Henry repeating arms, as it exists today, did not exist in the 1860s. The Henry repeating arms is not a continuation of a company that used to exist back in the 1800s. The Henry name comes from the Henry rifle. And the Henry rifle got its name because Benjamin Tyler Henry was the designer of it. He didn't have his own company. He designed this rifle, and guess who he worked for? The company that would become Winchester. So, Henry repeating arms as it is today is not tied to an Old West company. Is not tied to old manufacturing. They did use the Henry name because it's recognizable. And hey, good marketing on their part, I guess. But there are people that think that they are tied to a historical gunmaker, and they are not. I apologize if I've offended any of you Henry repeating arms fans out there. That was not my intention, but the facts needed to be laid out there. If you want the most period correct, the most authentic reproduction of the 1860 Henry rifle, it's the Cimarron 1860 Henry Civilian. Thank you for watching this video on the Cimarron 1860 Henry Civilian model in 4440. This has probably been one of the coolest guns I've ever shot or ever will shoot. If you're interested in this gun or these kind of guns, I highly recommend you go find yourself a Cimarron 1860 Henry and add it to your collection.